Hello and welcome to the first ever edition of the Tie Up. I am TIE Fighter X1 and joining me today is Red Fox 15. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ty?
I am better than yesterday. Thank you so much for asking. Just to give you guys a brief rundown of what we're going to be doing on the show, it is a weekly show that's going to be covering AEW, which is currently my favorite wrestling product. What about yourself, Fox?
Oh, by far.
So, All Elite Wrestling. Let's jump in. So we just had a pay-per-view called, what was it? Revolution? Is that correct?
Yes.
So we will go over some of AEW's Revolution. We'll start with the pre-show, we'll start with the buy-in, and then we'll work our way through the card and just kind of give our opinion on the card, and then look forward to Dynamite to see anything coming up for Dynamite as well. So with that, we will get started. And the first match was the Dark Order versus SCU. Do you want to go ahead and break down what kind of happened between the Dark Order and SCU leading up to the pay-per-view? Since this is our first ever episode, we haven't really talked about it in the past.
Yeah. So we could do that. So the story so far, and it hasn't been that great of a story, really, in my opinion, has been the Dark Order is trying to recruit Christopher Daniels of SCU, and he's not having it, and they're just constantly attacking the other two members of SCU, trying to get him to join. And it culminated into this match on the Revolution pay-per-view.
And how do you think that match went? What was your opinion on the match? Any notes that you saw?
The match itself was kind of boring. I mean, it was just a typical four guys in a ring doing a performance. Nothing really stood out to me.
Yeah, so me personally, I'm not a fan. And I guess I should have mentioned this before. Fox, you are a wrestling fan for how many years?
I've watched wrestling as long as I can remember, so that's a good 30 years.
30 years. And I have also been in or around wrestling since the early 90s. So that's 90, 2000. You have... Is that 30 years? Yeah, that has to be 30 years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, is that 40 years? No, that's not right. I'm not 40 years old.
Not quite there yet.
And I also used to wrestle on the independent scene, and have had some high profile matches with some top names. So for the show, I will be looking at things more from a wrestling standpoint. I also used to book for a couple wrestling promotions, so I'll be looking at it from like a wrestling standpoint or a inside the business standpoint, where Fox will tend to look at it more from a wrestling fan standpoint. So with all that being said, Dark Order versus SCU. I'm not personally a fan of the Dark Order. I don't feel the hype that they're trying to get over with the Dark Order. Do you agree with that, or?
So I'm going to borrow a phrase from Bruce Pritchard. This Dark Order thing, I actually like the Dark Order. I like how they're doing their promos. I like how the whole story outside the ring is wonderful. The problem is that bell rings, and then they're expected to put on a show inside the ring, and the quality is just way off from what they do outside of the ring.
Yeah, you kind of lose some of the premise when you put them in the ring. Even some of their minions and stuff, like, you're just like, who are these lackeys? Like, you don't necessarily want to take them serious, except when you see their promos and their vignettes and such. The production quality is really good, and you're like, oh, what is this? It reminds me of the NWO, except you had the NWO B team, which was Stevie Ray and Virgil, and it's like, are these guys really NWO material, or?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I look at the Dark Order. I kind of glimpsed through the match. I'm a huge fan of SCU. they're tremendous talents, both of these guys and Christopher Daniels itself. But I had no interest in watching Dark Order in the ring, so I did not watch the match really. But I did watch the after match. Do you want to talk about what happened there?
Oh, yeah, the after match. This was the entertaining thing. They could have just started here and I would have been okay. So the first thing we have is, all the Dark Order itself, more than just the two wrestlers involved in the match, are involved in beating the crap out of SCU. It's kind of old now. It's been going on for weeks. So music starts playing. Someone's going to come in. Who is it? Colt Cabana.
Yes. Seeing Colt Cabana in an AEW ring is long overdue, in my opinion. I've always been a huge Colt Cabana fan. And knowing that they were in Chicago, I had a feeling that Colt Cabana might come out on TV. I didn't know if it was going to be a TV only role or not, but it looks like he also signed full time with AEW. Colt Cabana is all elite. But we also saw Christopher Daniels come out and prove that he was not the man behind.
Oh, you killed the story there, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So it's a beautiful build-up. So this music starts playing, and all of the Dark Order stop and pull to a salute. I mean, very much our exalted one is here. And then you have someone come out just fully robed, slow pace stepping towards the ring, and then he throws off the cloak and it's Christopher Daniels and he comes in to clean house. Once again, things outside the match, beautiful, love it, great storytelling. If that damn bell didn't have to ring.
So with Christopher Daniels showing that it's not him, who do you think is actually going to be the exalted one?
Oh, man. I mean, playing into the rumors, the strong feel is Matt Hardy. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I love Matt Hardy as a performer. I love it when he's giving the creative control that he would have in AEW. But I'm not sure if I want to go with what everyone would pick to be the answer.
See, me personally, I still think Christopher Daniels is the answer. I think SCU continues to kind of give him the cold shoulder, and the announcers continue to kind of like write him off that he's not in SCU because they never say SCU. Talking about all three, it's always SCU and Christopher Daniels. So it would be very cool to see them try to do this swerve and then go back and use Christopher Daniels back in that role anyway, with the Fallen Angel.
It's definitely the better storyline.
Do you have anything else to say about that, or do you want to move on to the next match?
That little bit was the only good piece of that. We can move on.
All right, so the first match of the actual pay-per-view after the buy-in was Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager. Is it Hager or Hager?
I think it's Hager.
Hager? Okay.
Or Hager. Or if you're Jim Ross, it's Swagger. So
why don't you run us down the match and everything building up to this match at Revolution?
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, you have the Inner Circle, which at that point in time was Jake and Sammy Guevara, attacking Dustin in the parking lot.
Well, this was actually a couple months ago, if you really think about it. This was back in January, maybe December even.
Okay, so they're in the parking lot. They jump him. One of the things they decide to do is break his arm. I don't know if you guys know this. That's kind of a thing his daddy did, except for his leg. So they slam a car door on his arm, break his arm, put him out for a while. Dustin, new promotion, wants to prove his worth. He's considered the old guy in this thing, so he wants to show he's still got it. being put on the sideline didn't sit too well with him. So eventually he got to the point that he started calling out Jake. And finally Jake agreed that he was going to have the match after a couple of run-ins between then and now. And we got it, our Revolution. I'm having a really hard time not saying New Year's Revolution.
So speaking of Dustin, Dustin Rhodes is the son of legendary Dusty Rhodes, in case you live under a rock and have no clue who his father is. What do you think of Dustin Rhodes' character since coming over to AEW, moving away from Gold Dust into this Dustin Rhodes character?
This Dustin Rhodes, the natural. It's something he did prior to becoming Gold Dust, so it looks a lot familiar with a couple of new moves tucked in there to keep it fresh.
And so he used a unique face paint. I kind of like the black and red that he's been doing lately. Obviously, that's kind of my main color scheme personally. I think I would have rather him do like a red and gold. I think that would have been really cool for him. But his face paint today was more of a nose down instead of, I think he's been usually doing half the face.
Yeah, he did a 90-degree rotation.
Yeah.
It was an interesting choice.
So I wasn't crazy about that. What about Jake Hager? Or Hager, or I don't know. I don't know how to say it. AEW, make sure you leave a comment down below in the comments and let me know how I'm misnaming this guy. But what do you think of him and his MMA career, his Jack Swagger days? What is your opinion on
his Jack Swagger days? I feel like he was underutilized. He's a talent. I like the way AEW has built him. I mean, they haven't done anything with him outside of this match as far as in-ring goes. And
right,
that's been really good to build up the anticipation. People have been wanting to see this guy get in the ring. And I knew he wasn't going to disappoint. I mean, he's really talented. I enjoy watching his work.
So, to me, it's kind of curious. Like I'm curious about it, right? Because sometimes when he's doing backstage segments with Jericho, he's very straight faced, not saying a word. He's supposed to be like the hired muscle almost. And then other times you kind of see him kind of goofing around with Jericho, having a good time, which is, that's awesome because you want to have fun with work, right? But to me, I don't buy the whole straight-faced look and attitude from him. How do you feel about him kind of using that type of gimmick?
Yeah, my problem with it is we have Wardlow, who does that to a T. I mean, that's all you get from him. I like that he's to a lesser degree, that it's not, this is the only thing of my character's personality. So I kind of like that he's an in-between, and he just moves back and forth. When he needs to be serious, he's serious. When it's time to have fun, he's having fun.
All right.
I like that.
So what about the match? How did you feel about the match? Any highlights, any notes? Okay, we want to talk about who won, all those kind of things.
I'd like to start off with the shirt that Dustin walked out to the ring with.
That shirt was phenomenal.
Yes. So for anyone who missed it, Dustin walked out to the ring with a shirt that said, "I'm here to fight Jericho's bitch."
Yes. And
I don't think there's a better way to get heat from your opponent than walking out with that shirt.
And was it the O in Jericho, or was it? Yeah, I think it was the O in Jericho was a picture of Jake Hager's face.
Yeah. It was great. So the match itself was kind of a predictable back and forth between the two. I mean, they're two big names already walking into this, even though Jake hadn't had a match in AEW. I mean, people didn't think he was just going to get knocked out and it'd be over.
Right.
Especially with him being undefeated in MMA. So I felt they did a good job trading back and forth between who was controlling the match. I'm not sure who she was, but that person...
I was going to talk about this too.
Whoever he was making out with prior to the match, I could have done without watching up close Jake making out with whoever she is. I mean, just could have made it through the entire pay-per-view without having to see that.
Right. Yeah, that was real weird. And it goes back to the character he's trying to portray on camera, right? He's trying to be this real serious guy, and kind of be the muscle, the bodyguard, which is weird because they brought in what was his name? He appeared on Dynamite last week. He fought
Oh man,
Moxley.
I, yeah, I was just looking at him not too
He
long
looks
ago,
like
and
a
I
beast, and I'd like to talk more about him as well. Maybe if we have some time after we did discover that or discuss the whole pay-per-view. But the fact that he's like this he's supposed to be the muscle and
he's the mercenary.
the mercenary of Inner Circle, and he's sitting there making out with this chick right before the show or right before his match. It was very odd to me. Like, I don't know how that fit into the match, but
I
the fact that
Yeah.
Dustin coming over to her later in the match and kissing her, like, it kind of evens stuff out. And I was like, okay, I don't mind the beginning spot so much anymore. Now that they kind of like brought Dustin over and he kissed her and she's like, that's disgusting. But my main question is you said it best when you said, I have no clue who she is.
Yes.
If you have no clue who she is, I have no clue who she is. The fans have no clue who she is. Why is he receiving advice from a woman in the crowd when, like, nobody knows who she is? Like, if she was some top trainer in fighting, okay, sure. If it was like Ronda Rousey, right? Like, that would make a little bit more sense because, you know her background, you know that she's a fighter. This chick is nobody, according to most people. And you have Jake Hager getting advice on how to beat Dustin Rhodes. And I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah. And even more so, I mean, as soon as they started focusing on her like they did, it kind of predicted the entire story of what was going to happen with her for the match to me. I mean, like when you bring it like a significant other type person into the match, you know they're going to try to slap the person they're facing, and depending on face or heel, what the response is going to be. So a little bit of a heel move from Dustin, but I appreciated it.
What else? Anything else about the match?
There was a so Dustin has been doing the Canadian Destroyer. That is his new favorite toy. And
is it the Canadian Destroyer or the Code Red? Is it the Sunset Flip Powerbomb? I think it's the Sunset Flip Powerbomb that you're thinking of.
Okay, so the move he tried to do and botched it up pretty good.
Yeah, it was very sloppy. I took a note of that when I was watching as well. He went sideways. Hager landed on his shoulder mostly.
Right.
That was god awful. I mean, if talking about wrestling wise, that was like probably the worst part of the whole match was Dustin trying to go for that move. And I don't know, it was mostly miscommunication or mistiming between the two.
The timing was off. I felt like Jake didn't react at the rate he should have.
Yeah.
And it made the flip slower, and then they weren't in the right position when they did the flip.
Yeah, it looked god awful. The other thing I hated was and this is more me being in the business and pulling the. Everybody knows that wrestling's more of a show than anything else. Gravity's not fake. It hurts still, but it's more entertainment than it is a sport as far as that's concerned. Because of that, to me, anytime I wrestled, and I've always been a little overweight, I've tried to wear singlets. I wore some shirts for a little while. I've always hated people that would like pull down their shirts in the middle of a match. Like they would get knocked down, and as soon as they hit the mat, they like pulled their shirt down, or they pull their tights up. I've always had a problem with that because it takes away from the realism of the match. Hager was constantly pulling up on his tights after every single thing he did or took. and that really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if you noticed that, but I wanted to make a point about that.
Yeah, I have become so accustomed to everyone being sensitive to their outfits in that other major promotion that it doesn't register anymore. I mean, everyone's so precautious about having a wardrobe malfunction on that PG show
Yeah,
that it's just become part of the show to me. I don't even notice it anymore.
but in a real fight, do you ever see that? Do you ever see somebody trying to make sure their shirts like ducked down if they're beating the hell out of somebody?
No, no.
And that
I mean,
part that
I've
really
seen people
bothers
try to
me,
keep their
man.
pants on, but that's kind of understandable.
Right, but I mean, if you're really mad at somebody and your pants are coming around your ankles and you have underwear on, it's like, okay, well, I guess my underwear is gonna be showing because I'm about to beat this guy's ass.
You're more thinking about how getting your ankle uncaught so you can move again rather
Right.
than what am I
And
exposing?
in that case, I'm just stepping out of the shorts.
Right.
Other than that, I some of my notes was Hager looked completely lost, and he had to keep getting directions from Dustin when he was doing the corner clothesline spot. He clotheslined him like 6 times. It felt like, and you could see Dustin clearly talking to him. This is things I noticed because I was in the business. I know what to look for.
No.
As a fan, you might not have noticed. Did you notice that at all?
I didn't think about it. I mean, I saw it and I know what it is, but I just don't register it. I help wrestlers a lot when it comes to things like that because I don't let it phase me.
Right.
So
So that looked a little weird. But
yeah,
and it was only because he kept doing the clothesline that it looked weird. If it would have been 3, that's one thing, but it was like more than 3. Usually in wrestling, you do things in 3s, and so that's okay. But when it was more than 3, it was just like, I don't really know what's going on. We touched on the code red, and then I did want to say that Dustin had a cross armbar, and he really worked the cross armbar well. Jake defended it well. Dustin kept pounding away, trying to get him to break his arms free. He finally broke it free, and then Jake rolled up into an ankle lock from there. I thought that was done extremely well. Do you remember seeing that at all?
yes, it was good. Went into the traditional ankle lock from We the People.
Yes. And then as far as the finish, I have a note that it was very anticlimactic. I just watched this.
Yes.
Today's Tuesday. I watched it yesterday. I don't even remember the finish. Do you remember the finish of this match?
It ended, and Jake hung out with his female companion. I can't tell you how it ended. I can tell you.
Who won?
Oh, my bad. I do know how it ended. You know why? Because I documented it. Hager won by submission. So he had. He had Dustin
the
in a
sleeper
lock.
hold.
And,
Like the frontward sleeper hold.
So Dustin didn't actually submit.
I think he passed
the referee,
out,
Aubrey
right?
Edwards. Yes, the referee decided, and I'm kind of sad that AEW's camera production caught this. She barely kind of grabbed his hand to kind of motion that he's out. The typical raise the arm, watch it drop.
3 times. Always 3
Well,
times.
depending on your promotion, some promotions have gotten away from that, and it makes me very sad. I love that save on the third one. I mean, the way Hulk Hogan did it, there was nobody who did it like that.
We're still in it. I love it as well.
Yeah, I loved it. So she didn't even do that. She just kind of grabbed his hand, and then she called for the bell. I was kind of sad that the camera caught that. It took a lot away from it for me. And she's my favorite referee in the promotion, so it hurt twice as hard. But
yeah,
I gotta say, I've had my heart broken by her multiple times in this pay-per-view.
Have you seen that type of sleeper hold before?
Maybe once or twice. It's not a common thing I've seen.
So usually in pro wrestling, like being in the business, you do everything to My golden rule that I was taught was to do everything to the back row of the building that you are performing in. This way, that if they can see it in the very back, everybody else sees it too, right? You're really focusing on the dramatic part of it. And that sleeper was like very, like, nobody knew what was going on to me. Like it was so,
Right,
they're face to
right. All of a
face,
sudden,
they're hugging, like what's going on. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of the sleeper hold myself.
yeah, it was one of those things where the match was over before you understood why the match was over, and that's never a good thing.
Any closing thoughts on Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager?
Dustin is like in his 50s now, and he is performing amazingly. I'd say he's outperforming some of his WWE work. And it was good to see Jake back in the ring. I wasn't a fan of him when in his Swagger days, but as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate him a little more.
I'm not a huge fan of his work, Jake. That is, I respect him, like, and everybody in pro wrestling I respect. So anytime I say I'm not a huge fan of somebody, like, don't take that the wrong way. He does good work and he's a trained professional, and I think that he performed well in this match. But I've never been blown away by his work. He's always been kind of a mid card talent to me.
Yeah,
And that's unfortunate because I think that anybody can be main event material. And I just don't think he's find his groove yet. I think that the best of Jake is still to come, depending on how he wants to approach it.
I think there may have been some ring rust involved with this. I mean, like we
Definitely.
said, this is his first match in a long time.
And he pulled out one of the old Jack Swagger moves where he jumps over the guy, he does the middle rope, and he comes down the splash. So it was kind of cool to see that. But for Dustin Rhodes, this match has been his worst work since joining AEW. And I don't know if you can put that all on Dustin, but
I don't.
it was very unfortunate to see Dustin in this type of match and it go so badly. I rated all of the matches that I watched. Excuse me. I rated all the matches, and unfortunately, I gave this match a 1.5 star, just because I was just not entertained, and my attention was never grabbed by the work that these two guys did.
That's a reasonable rating. I probably would have leaned more towards 2 stars, but I don't have much to argue against your rating.
Okay. So we'll move on to match number 2, unless you have any closing thoughts about that.
No, I think we've beat that one.
All right. So match number 2 was Darby Allin versus Sammy. Is it Guevara?
Guevara.
Okay. So kind of catch everybody up on what's been going on with these two.
So we have Sammy Guevara, a member of the Inner Circle, and then we have Darby Allin, your typical outlier from everyone else. Darby has kind of aligned himself with Cody a little, so he's against the inner circle, I guess you'd say.
Inner
you had a
order?
situation.
Is that the
Yeah.
is that Dark
And
Order's inner circle?
if you want factions, AEW is the brand for you.
Right. There's so many factions.
I'm having a hard time finding people who aren't in some faction.
Right.
So Darby does this run in, and I can't even tell you when the inner circle's in the middle of beating everyone who's in the ring, and he comes in with his skateboard. That's an interesting little gimmick of his. I like it. He's actually a skateboarder, so I like that he brings his talent in with him. And at one point, they cause him to bounce his throat off the end of the skateboard. I don't know if you've ever hit your throat, just kind of casually on something. It's not a great feeling. I imagine full impact on a non-moving piece of wood. It's going to make a bad week.
Right. Or month.
So, yeah. So he takes some time off to recoup, real injury or not, who's to say. I mean, I don't know how it's not an injury. That's a hard one to fake.
Right.
So he decides, since Guevara is the one who set up the skateboard, Guevara's got to be the one to pay. So he calls after him for a couple of weeks leading into it, doing some entertaining things. Sammy Guevara used to do this fun thing in the picture-in-picture of the Weekly Dynamite show, where he does a call out to somebody who's available. He shoots his shot. I gotta tell you, Sammy Guevara, I love this guy. I know I'm not supposed to, but there is just nothing he's done so far that I just haven't loved.
Well, I mean, some people love the bad guys in wrestling, the heels, as
Yeah,
people and wrestling like to call it. Some people love heels. Some people, you know, the people that was supposed to hate NWO for taking over WCW, they loved him for it, you know, and so sometimes it's cool to like the heels, and Sammy is a cool heel to like. I mean, I'll
yeah.
say that
See,
with you.
but I did not like the NWO. I went all the way through 1999, and I did not like the NWO. Dusty joined the NWO. I got pissed all over again. So I am not your typical, oh, he's a cool heel, I like him.
Okay.
But AEW has produced some cool heels that I like. So, anyways, so he does these scenes where he's doing the little cardboard, and he being Darby Allin now, replicating what Sammy had been doing earlier on in the AEW season, talking about how he's going to take on Sammy at Revolution. And that leads us into this match with Paul Turner officiating.
So before we get into the match, I do want to point out that what Darby Allin did with the poster boards, and you know, a lot of things you see online videos where nobody's talking and they're just kind of going through these signs or these index cards, and you just have to read everything that he's doing. And Darby Allin did that with the signs, like the wrestling poster boards. That's
Yeah,
been so traditional to professional wrestling. What did you think about that? Because I thought that was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it.
I thought the signs were brilliant when Sammy started doing it. It gave the picture in picture that TNT was doing something extra. And then the fact that they had Darby pile on to that because that was Sammy's personal thing. That was
Right.
something that defined him. And then they had Darby do it, and it just locked my attention on the Darby. I
And
started
the fact
focusing on him
that
more than I did
Darby,
before.
like the font, you know, like he was still writing on the poster boards, or maybe it was him, maybe it was
Right.
somebody else, but you know, it was supposed to be his handwriting. Excuse me. Sorry. So it was supposed to be his handwriting, and the font that they used, like the scratch,
Yeah.
when he was writing, it looked really good. I really enjoyed that. And then you mentioned he was a skateboarder in real life. I really love the fact that they're bringing that in. I would like to see more of the skateboarding, though. You know, I know he sometimes rides it down the ramp, or I guess that's pretty much it. He rides it down the ramp. I would like to see more of that. A lot of people can ride a skateboard down the ramp, but if you're an actual skateboarder, let's see some cool tricks. Let's, you know, let's see you grinding the ramp or grinding the guardrail. You know, having the crowd back up so you could make a sick grind down the guardrail would be really cool. Otherwise, you kind of look like Jeff Jarrett and Road Dogg, Jesse James, to you know, bring back some old names, when they did the roadie, and Jeff Jarrett was the country star. You know, he couldn't really play the guitar, but he brought a guitar to the ring. You know, it's like, and Jeff Jarrett made it to where it was like that was part of him, because he always hit the opponent over the head with the guitar. But the fact that, like, I won't say the other promotion's name, but Elias, the fact that he actually plays the guitar is really cool, because you can actually see that there's actual talent there. And anytime you can bring real talent into wrestling as well, and kind of bridge that gap of fake versus real, like these are real people competing, it's really cool to me. So yeah, let's go into the match. So Darby Allin versus Sammy. Darby came out. So what was like the beginning steps of this match? Once Darby came out, let's take it from there.
All right, so Darby comes out on his skateboard. He's in the ring. He's out of the ring. He's diving on top of Sammy Guevara at ringside. He wants this dude. He wants him bad. They did a great job selling that Darby's upset about what happened and he's going to get his revenge.
Agreed. And then that was quite a bit of the match, right? Was no bell was actually rang. So anything you want to add about that? Like anything on the outside that you saw that was cool?
The outside happened. It was before the bell, which really fixed things for me. We'll talk about it later in the show, but God, so Darby is on a table at one point, and Sammy Guevara decides he's just going to spin 800 million times in the air and then land on top of him.
So it's like it was a 630, like a 630 degree senton, but he actually twisted
amazing.
With that, which was crazy. So it turned it into almost a splash. Like if the table wasn't there, that would have been like a complete 630 with a twist.
Yes.
So, but he landed kind of on a side on him. And then other than that, also like this, you mentioned the suicide dive. That was really cool. Darby then like tried to dive again, but he caught the top rope. He had Sammy draped over the guardrail. It looks like he was trying to like do maybe a front flip plancha outside of or underneath the top in the middle, and it looked like his legs caught, and he just caught just enough of Sammy on the guardrail. That looked like it hurt. But before that, or after that, actually, the skateboard to the face. I don't know if you remember that, but Sammy, I keep trying to say his name. Sammy Guevara grabbed the skateboard and he literally just chunked it at Darby Allin. And it hit Darby Allin in the face. I was not a fan of that. What is your take on that?
Darby Allin is a great performer who seems to think he needs to do things Mick Foley style.
Right.
And I kind of wish he'd stop. He's got a lot of talent. I hate to see it cut short because he thinks he needs to do something bigger and better and more dangerous.
Yeah, that was completely unsafe. You could have still hit him with the skateboard in a safe way, but if that board would have like rotated it all and he would have caught a wheel to the face, that could have been really freaking bad.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he hits the 630. They finally get in the ring. The bell rings. Walk us through that.
You know, I don't have a lot of things to say about it. It was just a physical match. These guys are great performers. They get out there, they sold their story. I was really impressed with the work they put into it.
So once they finally got in the ring, it seemed like outside the ring was more of the match than inside the ring, right?
Yeah.
So once they got inside the ring, there was two things that I thought was really cool. The first one being Sammy was choking Darby Allin on the ropes, on the middle rope, and you know he was standing on top of Darby, much like Chris Jericho does. You know Darby's draped over the middle rope. He's got both feet on top of Darby. He's literally standing on him. Something that I've never seen before, though. He backflipped off of Darby. And then Darby kind of fell down to the bottom rope at that point. And Sammy came up and delivered a kick to the bottom rope that caught Sammy, that caught Darby. Sammy backflipped off, caught Darby right in the throat with the bottom rope too. I thought that was really cool. I never saw that before, and I'm always a fan of things I've never seen before and like innovation. And I thought that was a really nice touch, him kicking the bottom rope after the backflip. And then later in the match, you saw Sammy take off the turnbuckle padding, which never really works for whoever takes off the turnbuckle. Like you always know, like, oh man, that was a mistake. You're gonna end up eating that somehow.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Sammy got monkey flipped into the turnbuckle. And then Darby followed that up with a coffin drop off the top rope for the 1-2-3. I thought that was a really cool spot, though. Anything you want to add to that?
I'm just entertaining. My exact note for that move was coffin drop for the 1-2-3.
What do you think of the coffin drop as a finisher alone?
It is such a simple move that doesn't appear to be all that devastating, but it is still one of my favorite moves that goes on in this promotion.
So my wife is a huge Darby Allin fan. She loves the way that Darby moves.
Yes.
And he kind of floats through the air when he's flying. Some people look really graceful in the air. And Darby Allin is one of those people, even when he's like pretending to be dead, flying through the air, he still looks like he's being very graceful with it.
I just love that look of, I hope this works.
Right.
And then he's on top of people.
Yeah. So I hate when he misses it, especially when he misses it on the apron. Like you said earlier.
Oh
yeah. He's very Mick Foley-ish and kind of throws caution to the wind, and when he misses it on the apron, I'm like, oh God, why are you doing that to yourself? I personally rated this match a 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought it was very good. The pre-match as well as the actual match itself. I thought these guys performed great together.
It told such a good story.
What do you think's next for these two guys?
I don't think they're done. I think they still. It doesn't feel like it's reached the pinnacle of what it should be. I don't think Darby feels like he's gotten his revenge. I think he just got a piece.
Darby, I feel like Darby's a big time player, and I feel like Sammy can be. Sammy's problem is I think Sammy feels like his character, not him as a person, but his character
Right.
seems like he's a bigger shot than he really is. To me, it kind of looks like he feels like, as a character, that he should be holding the heavyweight title, not Jericho. Even though when he's next to Jericho, it's all about Jericho. But like his when he's by himself, he just seems to be larger than life, and his body type doesn't fit up to that.
I think Sammy fits that category of that guy who's behind the guy who can really take care of things. Like, he's behind the champion. So he can be the trash talker that he is, but he has a lot to back it up. He is a great performer. I think he's one of the best talents on the roster.
Oh, completely
and
agreed.
Honestly, I would even go as far as to say standing in Chris Jericho's shadow has hurt him a little bit. I think he could go bigger.
You think that like he could go toe to toe with Jon Moxley?
Maybe not, but I think it's kind of held him back that he's been basically the stooge behind Jericho instead of doing his own thing.
Okay.
We haven't seen a lot of what he's capable of because he's been doing his supporting role.
Sure.
I mean, if there was like an intercontinental title or something, or a United States title in this production, I think Sammy Guevara would be a good fit for that.
Yeah, and I think that like if AEW started like a cruiserweight division, or even as most of AEW's kind of smaller stature anyway.
Right.
But yeah, a secondary title, Sammy would really be able to showcase what he can do there. But I don't ever see Sammy currently being able to get past that, unfortunately.
No, not right now. He needs some story building, and I would even go as far as to say the performer himself maybe needs a little more confidence in his work.
Okay. And before we move on, I want to say that the video packages between the matches, they were extremely well done. It was really good. Um, but I made a note of this, so I wanted to say it. I hate the fact that they actually did a special after Dynamite, but they reused the same footage to pretty much put in between each match. I thought that why did I watch it on like after Dynamite if I have to watch it again before each match? What was your takes on that?
Uh, I understand the refresher. They want to keep you up to date on what's going on, even though it hasn't been a long time since. They 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 want to keep you up to date on the story, so you don't question why are we here.
I think I would have been great with everything that they showed if they didn't do a full special after Dynamite though. Like I watched the special,
Right?
therefore I kind of felt cheated that I was having to watch the same thing twice. You know,
Growing pains is all I can really chalk it up to.
that is true as well. All right, so moving on, we have the Young Bucks versus Omega and Hangman. Catch us up on that story.
So there's your tag team champions, Hangman and Omega, the unlikely duo that picked the titles off of SCU. People didn't think it would happen. It did. And then we started having a breakdown with Hangman. Hangman seemed to be kind of more interested in consuming alcohol than doing anything else. And we have a tournament to see who's going to be the next contender for the tag team titles. And your winners and number one contenders, the Young Bucks, formerly the Elite with Kenny Omega. Hangman was considered part of that for a while, and now it became time to have the match. And Hangman's not really into the Elite anymore. He's not happy with the other guys, and he's not happy that his tag team partner is still very friendly with the people he's supposed to have a match with to defend their titles.
So, what do you think of the storyline itself as a fan?
I am not a huge fan of using alcohol as a scapegoat. Um, any type of addiction, I'm not a fan of it being used in storyline. I mean, I know it's a real thing and they like to bring realism to it, but I'm just not a fan of it.
And then what about as far as the tension buildings? Because to me, it's like it's interesting because Hangman is, and even going to Chicago. So Chicago is a special crowd, by the way. Chicago is very smart marks, which means fans that are very intelligent to what's going on behind the scenes. Chicago's always been kind of like that. So Hangman to me is like, and my wife said, he kind of feels like a girl. Because he's so upset about the Young Bucks, interacting with Omega, and I'm like, well, it's his first title run, and it's the first time the spotlight's on him, and he's kind of being selfish about it because he feels like the Young Bucks are trying to like put themselves in front of him when it's supposed to be his moment. So what do you think about that storyline itself? Alcohol excluded.
It's one of the better stories going on in AEW.
All right, and then so what about the match? So we saw the Young Bucks versus Omega and Hangman Page coming to the ring. The Young Bucks had pretty much no reaction at all, and then Omega and Hangman came out to huge pops, and those are cheers for anybody that's not familiar with that terminology. So what did you think of the crowd, siding with Omega and Hangman over the Young Bucks and not even really, giving the Young Bucks proper acknowledgement, like in Japan, right? Like in Japan, wrestlers are usually cheered no matter what, just
Yeah.
because Japanese fans realize like these are special breed of people and they respect that. The Young Bucks came out to no reaction. So do you think that's booking wise? Do you think that they're just not being booked as credible people, or do you think that Omega and Hangman are so over, so popular with the crowd that they didn't stand a chance?
Omega and Hangman are over. There's no question. Um, the Bucks are very popular. Chicago may have had an off night, but when you put them against this unlikely tag team that has just been amazing with their performance, it's hard to pick anyone over them. When I started seeing Adam Page in New Japan and Ring of Honor, I really got attracted to this guy. And when he came over to AEW with everyone, this was my guy. When he lost his title match against Chris Jericho, I was legitimately sad. I have gotten so far behind this guy. So seeing him with Kenny Omega, another one of my favorite professional wrestlers, it's a dream tag team in my book.
And
So
so Adam
they are great.
Page, I'm not super familiar with. I didn't watch much Japanese wrestling. So I didn't really see him until AEW came out, and I pretty much quit watching wrestling at this point, just because I was so bored with the main product being put on TV,
Yes.
and New Japan is so hard. I mean, it's not super hard to get over here, but it does take some kind of work. It's not like you can just turn the TV on and see New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, we're
Um,
not just turning into TNT.
right. So what made you such a huge fan of Adam Page?
Uh, just his performance altogether. He's really good at what he does. He has his move set. He's really good with it. I like his move set. It's a little different
Right.
than what I'm used to seeing. Um, the elite, each person, well, the Bucks being the exception, they're like a person, um, has their own unique way of going about things to achieve a victory, and I like how Adam Page does it. The buckshot lariat is a beautiful move. I love that flip over the rope. And then the move they're not doing that I wish they would, Deadshot, is just a great move.
So people who's not familiar with Deadshot kind of explain what kind of move that is.
God, I'm not sure how to properly explain it. It kind of reminds me of a pile driver, but instead of holding the person in front of you, he's holding him behind him.
Okay.
It's like the best way I could think to describe it. It's one of those things you just have to see. Go on to your viewing platform of choice and just look up Deadeye and watch a clip of it. It is great.
Hangman Page Deadeye on your video platform of choice. So what about the match? What did you think about the match?
So my thing about this entire pay-per-view has been storytelling. And historically, I feel like people have accused the Young Bucks of not being able to tell a story. They're more of a we're going to do a spot after spot after spot and just get the crowd into it that way.
Right.
This night, they told an amazing story of we're two friends going into this, but there's some animosity and it's going to rear its head and some people are going to get angry.
So
And it was
we'll
just
kind
so
of
well
get
done.
we'll kind of get into that towards the end. So a couple notes I had. I thought that they opened the match really well. It was Nick and Kenny that started the match off with some solid chain wrestling. It was a little
Yes.
sloppy, but I thought it was still very good. And then they tagged in Matt and Hangman Page, which they exchanged some holds as well. And then Page, kind of got irritated and he spit in the face of Matt. I thought that was really good stuff. My wife hated it because like it's disgusting to spit in the face of somebody else, and I agree. But I thought it told a good story. What was your
Yes.
take of Adam Page spitting in the face of Matt Jackson?
Nothing says F you like hawking a loogie in someone else's face. There's just no doubt about that. You don't question how someone feels about you after they spit in your face.
So after that, we saw some great teamwork from Nick and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Okay, wait, we gotta go back. So how Matt reacted was just pure rage, and it was beautiful because he's just beating the dog crap out of Adam Page, and Kitty comes in and drags them off like they're supposed to be friends,
Right.
like he's his tag team partner, and he just pushes Kitty off and goes back to beating on him. And then Nick has to come in and drag him off, and he doesn't like he's too happy about Nick doing that either.
Yeah. The
It was
storytelling of that
beautiful.
is been really good. And I definitely want to touch on that in just a second. So we saw some solid tag team moves from the Young Bucks. My favorite was I don't remember which one of the Young Bucks it was, but Omega was on the apron, and one of the Young Bucks grabbed him in a head scissors, and the other one came off and did like an enziguri. I thought that was like really cool. It knocked Omega off the apron, and then they went on to do some additional great tag team moves on from there. But it was something new that I haven't seen. And the fact that, the one Young Buck grabbed him in the head scissors and prevented him from moving while the other guy came off and kicked him. I was like, man, that's really cool. And then as for the match itself, there was a lot of back and forth action between the two.
It was beautiful.
So then after that, we saw Page. He saw Matt in the corner and flipped Matt off. I thought that was a great way to further the story without furthering the story, right? Adam Page is in the ring and just gives the finger to the other guy. We already know that tension's building, but Page giving him the finger while he was about to do another move, it's just like, yeah, this isn't working. We're done. I thought that was really cool. What did you feel about that?
Oh yeah, and speaking of Matt, there was a point in the match where Hangman's got basically the momentum going in his favor, and he literally just tosses Nick into Nick's corner to get Matt to tag in. I thought that was beautiful. Again, to say, I'm just gonna beat the dog crap out of both of you.
Right. And then we saw some more double teams. One of the high spots I saw was one of the Jackson brothers. I'm not sure which one it was, but they did a nice springboard face scratcher. And then as soon as they did, they popped back up, like swung themselves out to the apron and did a sweet moonsault to I want to say it was Omega who was on the outside.
Yeah.
I thought that was it was very crisp. It was very clean. I thought it was very well done. And then we saw a nice false hot tag with Page. Omega was getting taken over in the ring. Omega went to go get the hot tag over to Adam Page, and just before Omega got to him, you saw Page get knocked off the apron. I thought that was really good.
Oh yes.
I saw a Canadian Destroyer that was a springboard Canadian Destroyer off the ropes to either Omega or Hangman. I don't remember. These guys were like in and out of the ring a lot. And the match was phenomenal. But that springboard Destroyer was really cool. I also saw when Adam Page had the chicken wing on one of the Jackson brothers. I think it was Matt came off the top rope with a cool 450 splash as Nick rolled up and out of the way. I thought that was really cool.
That escape from the chicken wing was amazing.
Yeah, and being put into a pinning predicament right after that. And this is what started the false finishes towards the end of the match. My wife really loves like solid matches, right? She the Darby Allin Sammy match she loved. But this match and these types of matches she doesn't like because of the the continuation of all the false finishes. I think she gets kind of burned out because she's like, "Oh my god, when is this gonna end?" And she doesn't appreciate the false finishes and such a good match going on for so long. She just wants to know what's going to happen. And this match had plenty of false finishes. And
Oh yeah.
I typically love that kind of stuff. But I feel like it should be only in matches that mean something. With that being said, like this match was a good match to have them in.
Yeah.
But I feel like AEW sometimes you have a lot of these false finishes in some of the earlier matches throughout the night. And that's not so good in my opinion. I don't care how many times somebody can kick out in a match like Rhodes versus Hager, for example. Like the build-up's not there in my opinion.
Right. There's a number of finishes like that you can do in a match, and there's a number of false finishes you can do in a show.
Right.
And I think AEW likes to push the limit on those numbers.
Yeah. When every match is the same, it kind of makes it less special when the bigger matches do those. Some other cool things were the top rope fallaway slam where Paige did a complete moonsault into a pin with the fallaway slam. I thought that was phenomenal. The reverse Rana off the ropes onto Kenny Omega looked great. Like Omega sold it well. It was really well done. The rolling Northern Lights on the apron to Adam Page, that was a big highlight for me. And then following the Northern Lights on the ramp, you saw the Indie Taker, which is a tombstone pile driver followed with a springboard kind of like assist from the other young buck. That was pretty big. But what was your take on Matt's? So Matt was in the middle of the ring going after Omega, and he starts ripping off the tape off of Omega's shoulder, and Nick had to come in and kind of calm Matt down. Like, what did you feel about that?
I feel like Matt had just had enough of all this, and he just wasn't seeing Kenny as his friend from the Elite and the person he traveled through Japan with, and he just finally just saw him as his opponent. And again, saying this is some of the best storytelling I've seen out of AEW so far.
And then
little things like that.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. But what about Nick coming in and trying to calm him down? Do you think that hurts or helps build the story?
I think it helps to have someone there who sits there and says, "Look, we still want to be friends after this is over." Got to remind him that this was the goal walking into this, was still be friends when we're done, to not have a golden belt come between the Elite.
And then
I think it's great storytelling.
The end of the match, you saw Omega lift up one of the young bucks, try to hit what's his move called? One Wing Angel.
One Wing Angel.
Yeah, so he tried to hit the One Wing Angel on one of the young bucks. His shoulder gave out after that grueling match with Pac on Dynamite as well. The 30+ minute Iron Man match. You saw Hangman come in. He hit the One Winged Angel and then followed it up with a buckshot lariat to win the match. What do you think about Hangman hitting the One Winged Angel when Omega obviously couldn't?
They have put so many little tidbits of story into this, and Hangman using the One Winged Angel is just another beautiful piece of it. I mean, you know there's issues between the Young Bucks and Hangman Page. You're slowly seeing issues between Hangman and Kenny Omega, and I think eventually we're going to see that come to a head.
Yeah, and before the match, Omega said, like, I was going to say, I do trust you, as Hangman walked out.
Those little vignettes, I'm loving them.
Yeah, and then after he was gone, he's like, "Well, I think I could trust him." No, I don't trust him at all. And then Hangman, towards the end of the match, he teased. First, you saw Omega and Hangman win after that buckshot lariat. Uh, uh, the Young Bucks kind of took a minute, but they were like, okay, yeah, you guys were the better guys. Let's shake hands. Let's hug it out. What do you guys think, or what do you think of that exchange between Omega, Hangman, and the Young Bucks? Hangman still kind of, hanging back, for lack of better words.
I think that the match may have put a little bit of doubt in Kenny Omega's mind on where they stand together. But ultimately, I liked them going into the Young Bucks going into damage control mode. Like spoke to their EVP status.
Nice. And then afterwards, you saw Hangman kind of exit the ring. Omega was actually kind of hesitant, and you've seen this a lot lately. He's been more hesitant. He's kind of leaning towards Hangman, and then he's like, "Okay, the Jackson brothers are still my friends."
Mhm.
What do you think that is? What do you think that means? That Omega's like been hesitant with the Young Bucks. Do you think that's more Hangman in his ear? Um, it's very
I
weird how this is playing out. It's very back and forth.
I yeah, it's you have this new team. This is supposed to be your duo. You are the tag team champions. It's supposed to be person one and person two, and you guys are together, and that's the most important thing. But from Adam's perspective, it's like the elite is more important than them being a tag team. And that's kind of giving him doubts on if they're really together and if he's someone he can trust. And because of how he's acting, in my opinion, Kitty's having issues with deciding whether he can trust Adam Page. And God, I love the story. I
But
can't
he's
say it
he's
enough.
he's also having issues with trusting the Young Bucks as well.
Yeah,
Um,
because their goal walking into this was to be the best tag team in the world, and
and they've made
the
that
person
well
here,
known that they
yes,
were here to win the championship, and Omega and Hangman got it first.
it's
Um,
really hard to say you're the best in the world when you're not carrying the belts.
right, and so this is like a third wheel relationship, in my opinion.
Yes,
You've got the Young Bucks and Omega, and then you've got Hangman and Omega with the Young Bucks, and Omega is literally the third wheel in this love triangle, even though there's two Young Bucks. But you saw Hangman Page kind of tease. He grabbed the ropes like he was going to do a slingshot lariat to Omega. Uh, what was your thoughts of that? Do you think Hangman would have done it? Do you think
man, a thousand things went through my mind because I love both these guys. They're great performers. So on one hand, I'm going no because this is a great tag team. I love these guys together, and I'm going, Kitty had a good run. I mean, he's still got the Bucks to fall back on. That's okay. Let's get that buckshot lariat going.
so? You know, this has to end somehow, right?
Yes,
How do you think this is going to end between the four of these guys?
I think there's going to be more division between Kenny and Hangman, and eventually they're going to lose the titles, and they're going to blame each other for losing the titles, and we're going to build some one-on-one matches from that.
And those would be excellent matches. Adam
Oh
Page
yes,
versus Omega for sure. Um, I think that was the way they were going prior to this. But after watching the pay per view and the way that the Young Bucks kind of acted in the middle of the match, I can also see some tension growing between Matt and Nick, and maybe those guys going heel, maybe those guys becoming the bad guys and completely breaking away from Omega and Hangman as well. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see where they go with this because for once, like, we have wrestling that is not fully telegraphing, and I think it has a lot to do with like these four guys. Uh, I think they have a lot of creative control. I think they're booking this own storyline on how they want it to go, and not being told what to do. But it's going to be very interesting to me to see where this plays out because, for once, I have no idea where this is going, and that is so exciting to me.
It was great because in the middle of this match, you feel, I mean, you just feel like the Bucks are doing this heel turn,
Right.
but you get towards the end of it and you're not sure anymore, and you get at the end of it and it doesn't feel like they're heels, but you had that moment, and that is just great storytelling. This, I can't say it enough. This was the best match.
So I know we spent a lot of time on that, but I feel like this match, probably more than any other match, except maybe outside the main event, deserved this time. But so from there we'll move on. We the next match we had was Nyla Rose versus Chris Stratlander. Kind of tell everybody what's going on with these two leading up to this match.
God, there's not a lot of story here.
It's really
I
not.
think that was one of the problems with the match. So basically, Nyla Rose finally got a chance to face, because Nyla Rose has been suspended for actions outside the ring. She finally gets her chance at the title. She wins it. She's a beast. It was
So
going up against a
she won
98-pound
it
woman.
up on Dynamite, and it was Rio she defeated, correct? On Dynamite, and I kind of thought that match was kind of out of nowhere. I also thought that Rio, you didn't see a lot of Rio going into the match anyway, so it's not like Rio was like a fighting champion. I know that she's in multiple promotions, so it's a little bit harder for her. She's a Japanese native. It's harder for her to get over to town, but I didn't feel like Rio holding the title in the first place was the right move, in my opinion.
I was neither here nor there on her holding the title. It didn't make the promotion for me, but it didn't break anything either. She's talented, but she's not even breaking triple digits in her weight class, so it's the believability isn't there.
Yeah,
Especially
and
if you had her going over someone like Nyla Rose or Awesome Kong.
even as Rio moves to the ring, like, it doesn't actually look like she's. I understand she doesn't have any weight to put behind something, but like, it's really noticeable with her for some reason. That the fact that when she strikes somebody, like, that would, I never would have been able to believe her going against Nyla Rose or Awesome Kong, like you said, she could legitimately beat those two. It's not like Rey Mysterio, right? Like, Rey Mysterio
Right.
could go against these super heavyweights, and you still, like, he goes against the Giant, the Big Show. You still feel like Rey Mysterio has a chance to win.
Yeah. So moving back to this match, on the other half, you have Chris Statlander, who literally just has this match because she has the best win record in the women's division. It just made for such a bad story. It's just you rank, it's your turn.
Yeah, and Chris Statlander, her character's based around being an alien. She boosts people on the nose. What do you think of her as a character overall?
I love her character. This is another situation where everything outside of the ring is great. I just enjoy it. I enjoy her interaction. I enjoy her personality. It's all great stuff. But when she gets in the match, something's missing.
So going into this match, I personally notice. I mean, you're following that awesome tag team match, and somebody had to
Right.
follow that match. I thought it was a bad booking decision to put that match before this match. In
Right.
fact, I almost would have put this at the start of the show or following Dustin and Hager, either match one or number two, because there was absolutely no crowd reaction for this match. What do you think that was?
It was just an underwhelming performance. I mean, it was all very basic. There was nothing that stood out. Everything that did try to stand out seems like it got messed up, but somehow they just didn't have any chemistry together, and it was painfully obvious.
And they started the match off with some chain wrestling, which was very odd to me. Um, Nyla Rose shouldn't be doing chain wrestling with anybody, in my opinion. Amazing Kong shouldn't be doing chain wrestling with anybody. It's like, do you remember that match between Big Show and Kane? And at the beginning of the match, they locked up and then they went into a hammer lock. And it's like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Like, Nyla Rose has no reason to try and trade holds with somebody. She's a beast, you know?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense character-wise for her to start trading wrestling holds. I thought that was weird. But the match was, very back and forth. I don't have many notes on this because I wasn't impressed with the match itself. Something I did write down was Chris Statlander went for a superplex on Nyla Rose off the top rope. That was extremely dangerous and extremely scary. It looks like, Chris Statlander went to go step up to the top rope. And as she did, Nyla Rose, was flipped off the top rope. It looked extremely dangerous. And I'm so glad that neither one of them was hurt from that. And then also after that was the finish. Nyla Rose grabbed Chris Statlander off the top rope. And she powerbombed Statlander from the top rope to the apron. And that as well looked extremely dangerous. It looked like she didn't have enough of Statlander and the timing was off. And I really feared for both of these people's health. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. And I also don't want to see anybody do anything outside of their limit. And I think that both of them were trying to do stuff that got them noticed, but instead it got them noticed for the wrong ways.
Right. These two people are, occasionally you just have that person who you just do not have, they're just not the right dance partner for you.
Right.
And if these two people never lock up again, I won't be brokenhearted.
Anything else you want to say about this match before we move on? Nyla Rose defends the title over Chris Statlander with the powerbomb off the top rope.
The title looks sad on Riho. It looks even worse on Nyla Rose.
It's so small.
It looks like someone has no idea how to do Photoshop work, and instead of scaling something down, they just brought the edges in.
Yeah.
So you got the oval for the title, and that's just a weird look.
And it's such a shame. I think Brandy really went into designing this title, but it's a shame because the tag titles and the heavyweight championship look so good.
Yes.
This title just does not look like it belongs with the other three.
Yeah,
it's
a shame.
It looks like a toy, honestly. And I kind of get that the women's championship is supposed to be like strong but petite at the same time, and show that kind of character. But I think they missed what they were actually looking for with this title.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on, we had MJF with Wardlow. This was one of your favorite matches, I know. The whole story leading up to it. Cody with Arn Anderson lead us into everything. There's been so much between these two.
There's so much story.
Yeah, so let's kind of recap all of that.
All right, so back in the day, almost it feels like, at the previous pay-per-view for All Elite Wrestling, Cody had his title shot against Chris Jericho, and at the moment, Jericho's got him in the Walls of Jericho, I think was the last thing we named it.
I think they call it
And
the Lion Tamer here.
do they?
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
I mean, it's always the Lion Tamer for me, back from his WCW days. But MJF comes out, MJF being the best friend of Cody. He's been supporting him since AEW started. If you saw Cody Rhodes, you saw Maxwell Jacob Freeman. There was no way around it. When Cody had to pick one person to be by his side for his match, he didn't choose Diamond Dallas Page. He didn't choose his wife, Brandy Rhodes. He chose MJF. So there's a bond there. And MJF comes out while Cody is basically being held in this submission with nowhere to go and no way out, and throws in the towel to end the match and kills Cody's shot at the title, because Cody had said previously that if he didn't win, he wasn't going to compete for the title again.
That's right.
So post-match, MJF's apologizing, talking about he had to do it. Cody's giving him the, that's okay, you're my best friend, you did what you had to do. And then almost out of nowhere, MJF gives him the low blow. Just completely turns on him. MJF has always been kind of a heel anyways, so
Right.
a heel turn for him isn't really a surprise.
I think that one was telegraphed, not because they booked it in a way that needed it to be, just because of his character and who he is as a person. You just kind of saw it coming, even if you didn't want to see it coming.
Yeah, it's not a question of if MJF's going to turn on you, it's just when.
Right.
So you have this turn, and
it's like
Cody
the Four
wants
Horsemen with the Four Horsemen with Sting. How many times are you gonna fall for this, Sting?
So Cody wants his revenge. He comes out. He offers his limited edition truck. He offers the shoes off his feet. He offers the watch off his wrist. Whatever it takes to get his match with MJF. At one point, he offered 50,000 cash. Honestly, I would have been in a match with him then for 50,000 cash. But,
I mean, MJF is rich though. He doesn't need the money, unless you watch the documentary, which is another like hidden nugget that MJF. I don't know if you've watched that, but the documentary behind who MJF really is so well done.
So he does the what's it gonna take, and finally MJF comes out and explains that it's gonna take a few stipulations to get this match going. The first stipulation being that he being Cody, could not touch MJF until the pay-per-view. If he laid a hand on him at any point in time between now and then, it was over. The second stipulation, the more different of the three, Cody had to take 10 lashings on television from MJF. It's a little psychotic in my book, but
that was definitely some interesting television. Like, I didn't know how that was going to be perceived, because who really wants to watch somebody get hit 10 times with a belt, especially in 2020? Like, you're not even able to use a belt on your children, really.
Right.
So, like, to see a grown man, want to hit another grown man with a belt 10 times was very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to this.
Okay.
But I want to finish off with the third stipulation. The third stipulation was Cody had to face Wardlow in a steel cage match. And he had to get through Wardlow basically the week before he had to face MJF. But going back to the 10 lashings, I I did not think there was a way to do that that would really entice people. I mean, you're talking about just watching someone beat another human being with a piece of leather,
Right.
but they were really good about it. I mean, I was really disappointed because this was the show of the three things. I mean, the two big ones being the lashings and the cage match. The lashings was the one that landed in my hometown. So
And
I'm
you were there
walking into this.
live for that show, right?
Yes, I was there live for that. I can tell you if AEW gets in the area, there's a good chance you're going to see me there. I was live for this show. I'm sitting opposite of the ramp entrance. I have this wonderful view of the entire thing breaking down, and I'm going, this is going to be horrible. He's just going to come out, he's going to beat him. And like you said, who wants to just sit there and watch someone just get beat with a belt?
Right.
But they were brilliant about it. They started off with MJF going, my belt's too good for this. I want to use your belt.
Right.
Just the mind games behind every lash. And then in the middle of it, you have all basically the heel characters coming out and standing at the top of the ramp because they want to see this firsthand. They don't want to watch it on a monitor. They want to take their eyes and see what's happening in the ring. And then you have Dustin coming out to support his brother. You have Arn coming out to support, Cody. Arn had become his coach of the Nightmare family. So just showing his support. The Bucks coming out. I mean, everyone who's ever helped Cody along the way, even Brandy, who had been going through this weird thing, was suddenly okay and there to support her husband
Right.
through this horrible time in his life. Because I can't say for certain because I've never been through it, but being beaten by your own belt on international television, might carry a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah, I don't know many people that can say that they've actually been through that.
And not only did he manage to do it, he managed to do it without touching MJF, despite having some tempting moments in the meantime. And
Right.
this story piece went on for a good 30 minutes. It was the end of the show, and just somehow again they took something that I thought this is a throwaway piece and they made an amazing story out of it.
Yeah. It's something that like expanded my beliefs that they were going to be able to like they had 20-30 minutes left on TV, and the fact that they extended that of over the story of somebody being beat with 10 lashings, and it's only 10. Like it's not like it was one per minute, right? With 30 lashings.
Right.
They spread 10 out and they told such a story while doing it. And the fact that Cody never touched him, because if Cody did, he would have lost the match, or he wouldn't have been able to step in the ring with him at Revolution.
Right.
I thought it was tremendously done. And then what about the cage match leading up to this? Do you want to touch on that at all?
The first cage match. All right, so that's big in its own right. This is Wardlow's first performance in AEW. So you have that, and this is kind of a different cage from what we're typically seeing because this cage doesn't really flex, and then on top of that, the goal isn't to escape.
Right.
You're still there for a pin or submission. This is kind of old school. Nobody in, nobody out. We're getting a winner out of this.
Right.
And it was a great match. Wardlow did much better than I thought he would. Typically, when you get that guy who's just there for looking good as muscle, they don't put on an amazing performance. Of course, Diesel being the major exception in my mind right now.
Sure.
But the finish of that match saw Cody climbing to the top of the steel cage and doing a moonsault off the top of the cage onto Wardlow to get the pin.
So in that match, you also saw a throwback to the old days where Arn Anderson slammed the cage door.
Oh yes, that was so beautiful. It's that moment alone made me wish I had made the drive to Georgia to watch that match in person.
That was special. And then you did see the moonsault. The cage was scary. I hope they improve. It was the first ever. And I don't think that they really thought some things through. The fact that the cage went straight to the floor, and it was not secured to
Yeah.
the ring was very dangerous.
Yeah, there was just that little bit of space that created a chasm that really could have messed things up.
Yeah, I'm glad nobody was seriously hurt, because yeah, definitely the fact that they could fit between the cage and the ring was very scary. And then the moonsault, Cody actually broke his toe delivering that moonsault, and I've watched that moonsault numerous times. Cody gets to the top, and he doesn't even look. All right, he stands up on the top and he flips backwards onto Wardlow, who thankfully was there in the right position, because that could have been very bad.
Yeah.
It looked like
Um,
Cody didn't want to have second thoughts. Like he was just like, "All right, we're gonna climb up and we're just gonna go with it, so we don't second guess ourselves." And
that's not a spot where you can really calculate. I mean, it's one of those that I mean, God, let me go back to Mick Foley. You can't sit there and think about going off the top of Hell in a Cell.
right.
You just have to go off the top of the Hell in a Cell.
And usually when you second guess yourself anyway, especially in those high risk maneuvers, that's when you end up getting hurt. I know from experience. But Cody is not. So we talked about Darby Allin being graceful. That moonsault was not graceful. Cody's
Oh,
a quick rotator, what I call him. He doesn't
yes.
like that moonsault didn't like float. You had what was the wrestler that used to do the moonsault? Eso Rios, old time Mexican wrestler, and he did a moonsault, and it just looked like he was floating in the air forever. Kurt Angle is another person. When he does a moonsault, it's like he's floating through the air. Cody just kind of flipped and went. Like there was no like graceful. It was just like, okay, I'm back first. Now I'm stomach first, and that's it.
Yeah. Most moonsaults are like you look at it and you're like, oh, they barely made that rotation in time. Where
Right,
Cody was like, if he had put a little more effort into it, he could have just landed on his feet.
right. So I thought that was interesting. So let's get into the match. Before we
Oh,
get,
we are discussing a pay per view, aren't we?
yeah. Uh, Before we get in the match, I want to say two things. The crowd is super into Cody Rhodes, and it's been that way since every show I've seen in AEW. When Cody comes out, the crowd is just eating Cody up. Why is that, Fox?
Cody left the brand and he did something with himself. And there's not a lot of talent that can say they did that. And people just got behind that.
So you think it's strictly because of who he created outside of the other major promotion? You think that they respect that?
I think they sit there and they said he didn't take Cody Rhodes and just take that package and took it to Ring of Honor and took it to New Japan. He sat there and he went to Wrestling Circus. I mean, he went to all the indie promotions. He did a title match against Jerry the King Lawler at one point
Okay.
for the Ring of Honor title. This dude went out to show that he's not royalty and that he just gets things handed to him. He proved that the character Cody was something he built from the ground up and was something to respect and appreciate. And he did a great job. The character's great. It has all the right amount of ego with all the right amount of moves to back it up.
That's interesting. Because in ring, he's a good talent. He's a great talent. But he's definitely not like, the most talented wrestler on the show.
No.
And usually you have two types of champions, right? You have the person that is the best wrestler. Eddie Guerrero comes to mind. Like it was mostly his in ring work that made or Kurt Angle or Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is probably the best example. Bret Hart, people that can actually just wrestle, and that's why you put the title on them, as opposed to the other spectrum. Hulk Hogan, right, is the best showman, and you really got behind, or everybody got behind him. Grown men and everything got behind somebody that said, "Hey, you better eat your vitamins and say your prayers, brother." Uh, so you have those two types of wrestlers, and Cody's kind of in between both, in my opinion. And the fact that he's so popular still kind of blows my mind. I never really took what you just said into consideration. The fact that he left the greener pastures and made something greener himself with his hard work. And
He definitely had that chip from being Dusty's kid,
yeah,
and that carried a lot of weight. And he proved that he wasn't getting all that he got because of who his dad was.
So a lot of the reason that we've heard he left the major Spock, right, Sprock, was because of other wrestlers and how they were treated, and the glass ceiling and all. But to me, it seems like each show, especially the big shows, you have these grand entrances from Cody that looks very familiar with somebody else that's a major player in the other promotion. Not so much anymore, but in the past. I just feel like that was one of the main reasons he's left, and he's kind of treating himself the same way, and I don't know how to feel about that. What is your take on that?
So I lean more towards the creative as to why he left. He got suited with something, I feel, just because of who he was. Um, Basically a copy and paste. Let's rearrange some colors of his brother.
Right.
He tried to make some creative adjustments, and the creative team didn't want it. They were happy with where he was. They were happy with what he's doing. Being held down with the type of person that Cody is doesn't work well for long. So he asked for his release. And I feel like when it came to AEW and some of the things he did for AEW that kind of brushed up against that person you mentioned, I think he felt the need to just kind of knock on the door and let them know that we're here and we're ready to play.
And you saw that in the first major pay-per-view they did. Like he destroyed, the chair of said person. But like from there, I think it keeps going, and it's just like, okay, well now you're just kind of turning into that person somewhat as far as your entrances for these big pay-per-views go.
But being the quote unquote underdog, he can get away with that.
Yeah. So what about the match, man? What was some of your takeaways from that match?
I'm a mark for Cody, so it's not hard to say that I just thoroughly enjoyed the match. And honestly, MJF, being a heel aside, his dedication to his character, it just makes me love him all the more. Seeing some of the things he says and does at signings and conventions, that it amazes me that AEW just manages to miss lawsuit after lawsuit, to be honest.
Yeah. So MJF is my favorite type of heel. Number one, he lives that character, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot of bad guys in wrestling that when the cameras are off, they're taking pictures with fans, but MJF takes his character to the realism of who he is, and I absolutely love that. I love the old school mentality of his character, but mixing it in with the new school stuff, right? You saw Ric Flair, right. Huge coward in the ring, and that's what MJF to me is.
Yes, I was going to say. He very much reminds me of Ric Flair. I mean, he seems like he's gone, where Rick finally figured out a lot of things towards his 30s. I feel like MJF at like 23 is already there.
Yeah, it's like he could take care of himself, but he'd much rather go the easier route because he knows that way is effective. Like,
Right.
I can hug you and then just knee you in the nuts because you're not expecting it, and I don't care what you think about me because of that.
Right.
I loved him as soon as they went to go tie up. He ducked under the top rope. This is things that I used to do as a professional, and that's why I love him so much. Is because like he's a lot like me. You saw him jumping the rail, knocking the hat off of a fan, taking a beer and like throwing it on somebody else. And it's just like, oh my God, like this guy is going to get stabbed after the show. And that is the kind of heat that you want as a top heel in a wrestling promotion.
I love that you think after the show. I was concerned for his well-being while he's inside the crowd.
I have been hit in the back with somebody's cane during one of my wrestling shows because I upset them that much. So yeah, I just really love the fact that he's so involved with his character that he wants that kind of heat and he doesn't care how he gets it. Yeah. It's called cheap heat, right? But
yes, it's effective.
It's effective, and when you embrace it, it's no longer cheap heat to me. It's legit heat, like yes. You can tell when somebody's just doing something to try and get a rise. You can go into a crowd, right, and badmouth the college team. That's cheap heat. You can do it in the same way though, and the fans actually like think that you feel that way. And it takes it to a completely different level, So what about the psychology of the match? I thought it was awesome that MJF, he focused on the shoulder first of Cody, and then knowing that he had a fractured toe, he moved on to the toe. He unzipped the boot. He even bit Cody's toe. What did you think about all that?
Oh man! All right, so he takes the boot off, and only MJF faction of getting heat up on this throws the boot at Brandy. I mean, I think this is the only guy in this entire promotion that could get away with that. There's a special rule set for MJF, and he likes to push that line. But yeah, he bit this thing that's around his foot, and it's like a cloth material, some padding. So Cody's been wearing this wrestling boot, and he's sweating on his foot. And MJF thought, this is going to be a great idea for me to stick this guy's foot in my mouth.
Right.
Like this padding that he's been sweating in, because I know he didn't put that boot on just before he got into the match. I think there may have been a little bit of pacing prior to, walking from the locker room. Yeah. So, let me take a moment to go back. The entrance with Cody.
Go ahead.
Having the live band perform his music to enter and bringing his entire Nightmare family with one of my personal favorite actors, Stephen Amell there, who can no longer wrestle. I loved that entrance. Cody never fails me with an entrance. There's always something interesting. There's somebody with him that I'd want to see, even if it's just for a minute.
And that's kind of what I was gearing towards earlier when I was talking about the other person and their entrances, having the live band, walking from backstage. Like it's becoming his entrance is becoming more of part of the show than his actual matches are somewhat. Which is interesting. Oh, and he also revealed the new tattoo. Do you want to touch on the new tattoo at all?
The American Nightmare skull. It's a beautiful design. It is never something that should have been tattooed on someone's neck.
Yeah, bad placement of the match, or of the actual tattoo. But
I mean, the actual tattoo, it's kind of like halfway on his neck, halfway on his collar. So it's kind of bad in that. I feel like it either should have been more up or more down. I mean, I almost feel like he sat down in the chair and said, "Where's the worst place you could possibly do a tattoo?" And the tattoo artist said, "I got you, fam."
So you mentioned Brandy, and I actually made a note of this. I'm not. So we haven't seen much of it lately, but I'm not a fan of Brandy being at ringside with Cody and rooting her husband on when on the other side she's been with Awesome Kong and shaving people's heads.
That was the psycho Brandy. She got better.
So
She sat she sat down with her therapist and she worked things out.
did they have that on TV? Did I miss it?
No, no, that was like two video things she did on Twitter to, or maybe YouTube as well, but two video
Okay.
things she did to sell the story. The nightmare thing kind of fell apart um, for reasons behind the scenes, but she had to pivot. She wasn't happy where things were going. Awesome Kong was having issues, so she pivoted. She had to have a reason for doing it. I applaud her for not just changing a story out of nowhere with no answer as to why we changed. So I applaud her for that. But she turned,
I
and
think I
for
think
that.
it was a missed opportunity though, because uh not everybody keeps up with Twitter, not everybody keeps up with YouTube. You have a weekly TV show, and if you're going to pivot her, I think it was very important to pivot her on TV, doing
Well,
those kind of things, so that
you have the weekly TV show, but you got to think this is a weekly TV show that came out of being the elite.
sure.
So this thing is not limited to what they put on TNT, because even after that, they do the AEW After Dark matches,
Right.
which are put on YouTube on the following Tuesday. So to say that you should put it on TV, I don't feel like is a good excuse in this day and age,
But you're also
especially with how
talking
this promotion is doing things.
you're also talking the casual wrestling fan, right?
Yeah, there are people who are just watching on Wednesday nights,
Right.
and
So
they may be
at
missing out on the
least
story.
at least a small clip of Brandy saying, or a small section, right? So there's in marketing and in content creation, there's this big thing called macro and micro content. So the macro content was Brandy going to these therapists. It was all her Twitter videos, right? You
Yeah,
should at least take a micro bit of that video, right? Show her sitting in the therapy room, put that on TV, and saying, for more information, come to AEWWrestling.com. And then from AEWWrestling.com, you could have the video that's linked to the YouTube, that's linked to the Twitter. Something more to get people more interactive with those other avenues, because a lot of casual wrestling fans don't know better, especially if they're so used to the other platform. They're
right.
not going to be looking on Twitter and on the websites or on YouTube for that kind of stuff. So I think you have to hold their hand a little bit and say, "Hey, follow me over here," and see what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're talking about a 2-hour show where they're trying to pack a lot of stuff in. And
But
as far as priority levels, I think when you are accustomed from the other promotion that people are just doing a different story now, I mean, people are just willing to accept that. If you want a story to say why they're doing it, it's there. But if you don't need it, you don't have to deal with it.
a 10-second promo, right?
You couldn't fit what you needed to fit in these videos in 10 seconds.
Why is Brandy at the therapist office?
Well, Brandy has been doing these things where she's going around cutting people's hair off.
Right. But if you just
People,
show her for 10 seconds in the therapist office, that is enough to get my mind going to say, why is she in the therapist's office? That's
right,
enough to
but
lead me somewhere else.
I disagree on that. I think it would be enough to be annoying because you now have to actually go make effort to figure this out. And if you cut off basically any of this, you're killing a story. People are incredibly lazy when it comes to their content being fed to them. So I think if you're not going to do the whole thing, don't do it at all.
That's interesting. We'll agree to disagree. Let's go back to the match. Um, so to me, it's been incredibly refreshing, and some of this has been the hard way. We saw Dusty, or not Dusty. I'm sorry. We saw Cody get busted open in his match with Jericho when he missed the suicide dive onto the ramp. He cut his head open. Tonight, or not tonight, but during Revolution, we saw MJF get busted wide open from Cody, and it's been really refreshing because since the other platform went PG, we've kind of broken away from the blood, and we've actually seen them stop matches in the middle of a match because somebody is bleeding, and it's just like, come on, this is still a sport. Like we should be able to see blood and not have to turn our head. So AEW's been doing it very meaningful, and I think it's been refreshing. What is your take on the blood inside of AEW?
I do not have a problem with performers bleeding. I will say that back when Cody and Dustin had their match, I was legitimately concerned for Dustin's well-being. I mean, I don't get squeamish, but God, that was a lot of blood.
Right. So what about Arn Anderson, Double A? He's always been one of my personal favorite. I'm still waiting for a nice spine buster to be placed on somebody. I was hoping it was going to be MJF during that match, or maybe even Wardlow. What do you think about Arn Anderson getting his bell rung from Cody when MJF ducked out of the way?
So I can't tell you how shocked I was by this. All right, I am Arn Anderson fanboy. That dude is incredible. Listen to his podcasts on Westwood One. He's great there too, amazingly. He's not the type of person you would think listening to somebody talk. He's very one tone of voice. Sounds like he could put you to sleep pretty easy, but man's great at telling a story. I was shocked to see him take a hit to begin with, much less a hit to the head and neck area,
Right.
because his neck is what put him out of wrestling to begin with.
It was very cool though. And then we saw MJF rip the belt off of Cody. And then that actually backfired on him. Cody got to use the belt, which brings us back to the lashings that we were talking about earlier with Cody being whipped. MJF got 2. It definitely wasn't 10, but what did you think of the callback to the whippings?
I liked the callback. I didn't like that they had Paul Turner up front and center watching this happening and just letting it go.
Yeah, it's weird because he even actually like stopped and like, Cody, you can't do this. And it was like Cody was like, "Oh, come on, like one more." And he's like, yeah. "All right, one more. Okay, like like you can do it. I give you permission." That was really odd to me.
I didn't like that. I've become more of a stick to the rules kind of guy, especially after watching some of the tag team wrestling where all 4 men are just in the ring all the time.
Right.
They just pop in. It's actually got me looking into some discussions about how to change tag team wrestling. And remind me, I have one from Arn Anderson that I'd like to share with you later.
So with that being said, though, so AEW seems to be a little bit laxed on the rules. They seem to like focus more on like Japan wrestling rules as far as like if it's part of the ring, if it's part of the arena, it's not necessarily a disqualification, right? You can use the ring steps. You're not going to be DQ'd from the ring steps. If there's a chair there and you bash somebody's head onto the chair, you didn't use the chair as a weapon, but you use it as a prop. It's more allowed. So well, that's kind of odd to me because, you see people getting put through tables and nothing's being said about being put through a table. However, Cody wears the belt to the ring. The fact that he wears it to the ring, you would think that that kind of aligns with that. But the fact that the ref's like, no, you can't do that. It's like that. Where's the line there?
Calling back to 30 years ago, this is the same thing Hulk Hogan did. I mean, like weight belt and everything.
Right.
So
I'm just confused.
Everything old is new again, I guess.
I'm just confused where the line is as far as disqualification
Is it the face?
goes.
Is it the face doing it, or is it the heel doing it?
Right.
I think that's the line.
And then we saw the finish. We saw Cody getting the better of MJF. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, which I loved, MJF got the knockout punch with the diamond ring on his fist. And it looked like Cody was going to win. And then just, in the blink of an eye, MJF knocked him out cold. What'd you think of the finish?
I mean, that's become MJF's finishing move as far as I'm concerned. I love that as his actual finisher, it's the Crossroads, but he calls it the double cross.
Right.
I love that naming. It just fits MJF to a T. But no, he's been using the ring every match. I'm tired of it already.
You're tired of it as a fan, or you're tired of it as a like you want to see something new?
I mean, I've been watching using the ring. God, I think Cody used his Ring of Honor ring for a couple of matches to finish. So I could live with some more finishes like that, but we're looking at literally the exact same thing over and over again, just inserting a new competitor each time.
And see, I'm a huge fan of it because MJF's character, right? You expect him to take the shortcut. I wouldn't want to see MJF beat somebody with the double cross. I would much rather see him win with the ring shot, or win by disqualification, or lose by disqualification, even lose by count out. Those kind of types of things, I think, brings more value to his character than it does hurting him overall.
I think MJF is portrayed as a very intelligent character. I feel like they need to expand upon that. Using the same way to get out of it each time makes him feel very one-dimensional.
That's fair enough. All right. So anything else you want to talk about this match before we move on?
I don't think there's much more we could talk about.
No. We spent a lot of time on this match as well. But this was also, one of the headliners of the show. So
this is one of the big payoffs.
Next up, we have Pac versus Orange Cassidy. There was a brief history here. Do you want to go over that real quick?
I don't think I could properly explain it. This felt like it almost came out of left field to me.
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks of television that Pac had a problem with Orange Cassidy. I don't even really remember how it came, except for the following week, Cassidy came out and got in the face of Pac and said, "Yeah, okay, we're on."
Yeah,
but I think it was something the week before. What did you think of the match itself?
All right, so walking into this, I saw Orange Cassidy, who hasn't actually wrestled anyone in AEW. And when they said that this was the match, I thought, this is the match where everyone's going to get out of their seat, run to the bathroom because the main event's coming up, get a refill on their drinks, hit up some popcorn, the typical let me up match. I took a look at the crowd as this was starting and realized, yeah, people are standing, but they're standing directly in front of their seat. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
It really caught my attention how much everyone was interested in this match, and this did not strike me on paper as the match that everyone was paying attention to.
Yeah, so when they first booked this, I was like, I want nothing to do with this match. I want nothing to do with Pac, who just got done going wire to wire with Omega, and we've seen him versus Omega a few times now, and they've blown the roof off every single time they get in the ring. He's literally one of the top 5, if not top 3, single wrestlers in AEW. And you're booking him against somebody who is strictly comedy, in my opinion. Not that Orange Cassidy is not talented, but his character is more comedy driven, not what he can do in the ring. So because of that, I had no interest going into the pay-per-view, wanting to see this match. But they quickly changed my mind. The crowd chanting, "Please don't die," at the very beginning of the match, I was like, okay, the crowd is really into this. I need to give this more of a chance, because they were strictly behind Orange Cassidy. And I knew this going in, but I never really paid attention to it. But Orange Cassidy is probably the number 1 babyface as far as reaction goes in AEW.
I don't even think that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think you could easily say he is the number 1 babyface.
I don't understand why he's so over. Like, I get it. It's cool. It's fun. That the hands in the pocket, the sunglasses. But it's just like, why? Like,
he... Okay, first, sloth style for life. Secondly, he is as dedicated to his character as MJF.
Yes, he is.
And that kind of dedication just gets you over. That's just it.
So as far as the actual match, what stood out to you?
MJF, man, it's starting to get late. Orange Cassidy ran, like, intentionally put one foot in front of the other at a high pace. And this is probably the most he's ran in like 30 seconds than he's done the entire 6 months or so that AEW has been a thing.
Right.
And just to see Cassidy, like, he did this awesome air raid crash, and just to see all the effort he put into it, because that's not something we're accustomed from Sloth Style. You don't get a lot of effort out of it. And just to see all this effort that no one was expecting to come out of there, it was really impressive. It was conditioning. They set us up for Pac's just going to beat the life out of him, and we actually got a little bit of a competition.
Yeah, and for this to be the semi-main event of the show was surprising. Like you would have thought that this would have been towards the beginning of the show, especially with how you thought this match was going to go. So the fact that they put this as semi-main event was very surprising. I actually didn't even realize it was going to be semi-main event. I was like, oh, well, what other matches do we have before Moxley and Jericho? Like, this can't be the match before Moxley and Jericho. I thought it was very well done. Some of the notes I took, yay boo chants during the shin kicks. That was phenomenal. The arm drag without any hands. So he had his hands in his pocket and still performed this luchador style arm drag. And I was like, well, that was gold. Once the comedy died down, of course, Pac started dominating, right? And it was done in a way that, like, Pac didn't look bad when he was going along with the comedy. It still looked legitimate. It still looked real. It wasn't forced like sometimes you see on the other platform with some of their comedy wrestlers, and you just force the comedy down the throat. Like, this just seemed like, okay, yeah, he's got his hands in his pockets, but he's still performing actual wrestling moves. And it seemed legit to me. Towards the end of the match, Pac had him down. And, like, at this point, I was like, all right, the match is pretty much over. Pac is just going to, like, beat up Orange Cassidy for the rest of the match until he's done. But then Pac climbed to the top rope, and Orange Cassidy, like, rolled out of the way. And then Pac went to go get him, and Orange Cassidy rolled back the other way. And then Pac got out of the ring to, like, cut him off. and Orange Cassidy like rolled towards him and then saw him and just started smiling. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is gold! Like this is so well done. But the comeback spot for Orange Cassidy was really well done. The series of DDTs that he hit on Pac, I legitimately think, like, I felt like Orange Cassidy had a chance to upset Pac, which is
Yes.
very hard. Like when you think of comedy and serious wrestling and the character Pac plays, the character that Orange plays, um, the fact that they legitimately had me believe that Orange Cassidy had a chance was outstanding to me.
Yeah. Orange Cassidy is a great performer, and I look forward to his next matches to see more of what he's capable of doing. I feel like we're only scratching the surface.
Just to kind of go back, I forgot to tell you guys my ratings on the other matches. Nyla Rose versus Chris Stratlander, I rated a half a star. I was not very impressed with that match at all. Cody Rhodes versus MJF, I gave 3 and 3/4 stars. It was right there underneath a 4 star. It was very good. This match, I actually gave a 4 star rating just because of how well they actually performed in the match, and made me believe that this comedy wrestler had a chance to beat Pac. I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, definitely so.
So then we had the main event. Talk us through John Moxley versus Chris Jericho leading up Le Champion.
So Chris Jericho is your AEW champion. Chris Jericho is running the inner circle. John Moxley is your number one contender. John Moxley is undefeated in AEW. Jericho sees this as a threat. Doesn't want to lose his title. I mean, who doesn't want to be the top guy? If you don't want to be the top guy, what are you doing in this business? So Jericho decides that you can either make enemies or you can make friends. Let's bring Moxley into the inner circle, make
Smart
him part of
move.
the team. Maybe he won't be a threat, you know. So, he does all the nice things, invites him out, offers the $750,000 Ford GT, the most expensive car in the United States. So Moxley says, I'll give you my answer next week. Comes out next week, says that, he wants to be the best. He's into the inner circle. Takes his keys, celebrates in the ring with Jericho. Says, by the way, Chris, yeah, I'm not in. You only have one thing I'm really interested in, and that's that title. Butts a bottle of the Champion champagne over his head, gets out of Dodge before the rest of the inner circle can do their thing.
Let's take a second to stop right there real quick. Um, I remember watching that, and the crowd was completely dead once John Moxley unzipped his jacket. He showed the inner circle. Like, you could just tell that nobody in the crowd actually believed that John Moxley was going to be part of the inner circle, and they had no interest in even pretending that he was going to be part of the inner circle. They completely died for the next 2 to 5 minutes until Moxley busted the champagne over Jericho's head.
Of course, I mean, you spent this entire time with this guy building him up as the rebel outsider. There's no way he's going to join the dark side.
Right. So moving on from that.
I mean, so from there, you just have interactions between them leading to this. At one point, Chris Jericho takes a spike off his jacket and jabs it into the eye of Moxley, firmly believing in the phrase an eye for an eye.
Moxley returns the favor to, was it Santana?
Yes, Santana at Huntsville.
Yeah.
I got to watch that from behind. It wasn't the greatest shot, but
Um,
Moxley actually pulls out the keys for the Ford GT to stab him in the eye with, which was great. I
And
mean,
then
nothing
they
says.
did the weigh-in, right? The weigh-in for the heavyweight championship. What do you think of the MMA style weigh-in leading into the pay-per-view?
I mean, it's great for the pomp and circumstance, but I could live without it.
You know, it was very other platformish, except instead of the contract signing, they went the MMA route and did the weigh in. But we all knew that there was going to be some kind of drama. I didn't think
Of course.
it made a lot of sense. Weights don't really matter in pro wrestling, um,
Right.
but they still sold it in a way that it kind of made it interesting for TV. And I thought that they did a pretty good job for that. So let's go into the match then. We had Moxley coming in from outside, coming through the crowd like usual to no entrance music, which I kind of really like, by the way. I think that's really cool. And then we had a choir singing Judas, which was kind of weird, but it kind of made for big time TV, right? The big time pay per view. What'd you
Yeah.
think of Judas, and is it being overdone? Like, we already saw Cody Rhodes come out earlier to a live band playing his theme song. Now we have a choir singing Jericho's theme song. What was your take?
I enjoyed it. I give me as many alternatives to typical entrances at pay-per-views as you can. If everyone comes out to something special, I'm okay with it.
Even if it's every pay-per-view. I know that they don't run every month,
Right.
and it's a little bit special with these guys. I think it's every other month or so.
It's quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay, so
Yeah.
but for the other platform, you really only see it twice a year, maybe. The big summer pay-per-view or the big spring pay-per-view.
Right.
And these guys seem to be doing something special every pay-per-view. Um, you're okay with it though. You don't think it's going to get old?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm good with it right now. I don't feel like it's as elaborate as the other companies, April pay-per-view.
Right.
I feel like they go real big, whereas AEW is more of, we're just going to step it up a notch or two.
And that makes
So
a lot of
because it's
sense.
not hugely elaborate each time, I feel like 4 times a year, I'm okay with that.
So the lead up for the match was extremely well done. I personally was going to be really upset if they messed it up, right? Because we've been seeing this feud go on for a couple months now. How do you
The
think
collision course of this was very impressive.
how do you think the actual match going was? They started the match outside the ring. They fought all over the arena.
But no, they actually started the match inside the ring. They got in, they allowed the bell to ring, and that just ate me up. So Aubrey Edwards, once again, my favorite referee in this promotion, she's covering this match. And she's great. I love her because she's a stickler for the rules. And I feel like this pay-per-view broke her character. I mean, they ring the bell and they basically immediately get out of the ring and start touring through the stands.
Right.
And she just tags right along like it's a no DQ match.
Right.
This is just a standard match. This should have been over within 10 seconds of them both being out of the ring.
No, so
And
let me stop you there because I completely agree with you to a point. And I kind of like the fact that like referees have the discretion of saying, okay, I'll let this go, but I'm not gonna like let this go. Especially big title matches, like you don't want to see necessarily a low blow cause a match to end in a title match, right? Um, but at the same time, like where do you draw the line? As a heel, I was always a heel in wrestling, and I always used those kind of tactics to bail me out of bad situations if I needed to. If I felt like I was going to lose, I'll go grab a chair and hit the other guy over the head. They win the match, they lose the championship. I won the war, right? So how much of that can you continue to allow before you're taking away some of the other side of the bad guy character.
Right, right. And I am okay with that because I think there should be exceptions when there are high stakes like this. I mean, obviously we did it earlier with Cody with his match because that was a high stakes type of deal. But the fact that she trailed along through the stands like she was just a spectator, just wanted to get a good view of the events happening, really just ate me up.
So in that case, do you think it would have been better for her just to kind of stay in the ring and say, "Well, until you guys get in the ring, there's nothing I can do because I can't kind of pinfall out there, so I might as well just stay in the ring."
Right, not necessarily like stay in the ring, but like the entire time they're going, I expect her to be like tugging on their shoulder, trying to get them to go back into the ring this entire time. She just looked like I'm along for the ride.
Right.
And AEW has been a promotion that's really, for the longest, I ignored the fact that this is a presentation given to us with three people in the ring.
Sure.
The person in black and white tends to just be someone there to make a noise when someone's shoulders are on the mat.
Right.
And AEW has just been really good at reminding me that they're part of the story too.
Sure.
And just they've built a wonderful character with Aubrey, and it really hurt my feelings the way they handled this.
You know, the way that they built Aubrey, I could have even seen her sliding out of the ring, grabbing a chair, and putting it in the middle of the ring and crossing her arms, saying like,
Yeah,
"I'm not going to do anything until you guys get back in the ring." You know, like,
yeah, she has been very good at saying, "I am the person in charge of the three of us,"
right.
and I felt like they just completely blew that away.
So another point that I saw was I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's one corner in the AEW rings that has a single camera, and
Yes.
it's like on the turnbuckle of the camera. And what makes it noticeable to me is this was after they brawled through the crowd. They finally came back to the ring. Every time somebody goes for a top rope move, they always go to that corner to like try to get the best shot for that camera. I think it's very obvious to myself, but once again, I think as a wrestler, I kind of notice things like that, these little small things, small details. Why don't they buy 3 more cameras? It can't be that much money when you're talking about the rest of the production that these guys are putting on.
I mean, maybe set up and tear down. I mean, it's a lot easier to set up and tear down a ring with one camera than it is for.
So,
I mean,
so as a
that's the best
casual
I can offer you.
have you noticed that, or is it more now that I pointed it out, you kind of realized that they do that?
That's something that you pointed out, and it kind of registers now.
It's something I'm
Um,
going to ruin for you in the future when you're watching on Dynamite tomorrow night.
you know, you did that to me with the dentist, and
Look forward to more things about professional wrestling I can ruin for you. Um, Another thing I noticed was the heel hook from Mox. I think he went into the walls of Jericho, and Moxley reversed it into the heel hook, which was a really cool callback to the MMA training that they shoved down our throats that John Moxley was doing in his off time preparing for this match. Usually, when you see stuff like that, you never get anything in the actual match that calls back to that. The fact that Moxley hit the heel hook in the middle of the ring, I thought was very well done and actually brought attention. And kudos to the announcers for bringing it up. Like, you know, that's something he's been practicing, like with the crew that he's been doing training with.
yeah. So with this team, I actually hated all the practice shots that they gave us because I don't know. I guess I just kind of got in the mindset of the people I've been watching and how their creative works. But I saw that and I immediately thought, this is something I'm going to see in the match now, and it kind of bothered me.
So
I,
you didn't like it because the other side,
I did not.
they usually don't show things like that, in my opinion.
I guess it's just because of me just feeling so immersed with this team. I kind of got an idea how their mind works with some of these things. And it's calling back to Jake's female companion. I felt that was telegraphing just as soon as he said something to her that
Right.
she was going to be involved in the match, and the whole MMA training thing just telegraphed some of the moves I was going to see later on. And to quote Jim Ross, I kind of like to be surprised and react in the moment instead of knowing what's going to happen.
So overall, the finish of the match, walk everybody through what happened at the end.
So I'd like to point out that the inner circle, the entirety of the group, was ejected with one of the best ejections I've seen from a referee. The spinning hands followed by the spinning body. I
Yeah,
mean, it
it
was
was
well
a very
oversold.
theatrical the way that she
Yes.
ejected them, and the crowd ate it up too. I thought it was awesome. And she lives for those moments. She's very good in
Yes.
those moments where she is supposed to get over. She gets over well. And in the times that she's not supposed to be seen, Aubrey is great, like phenomenal of not taking away from the match, and she's
Yes.
extremely well in that regard.
And she is very much a fan favorite. I've experienced it twice now. The crowd is behind Aubrey Edwards.
So the end of the match, who do we see win, and what'd you think?
So we saw Moxley win, and at some point, I don't remember exactly what had happened, but we get a reveal that the eye isn't actually damaged, and it's just been a ploy to lure people in this entire time, and
And
it
that was after
shocks Jericho.
Sammy came in, hit Moxley with the title. Looked like it busted him
Yeah,
open the hard way, right over the eye. You saw the eye start gushing
yeah.
blood.
He actually got busted open earlier. There was a
Yeah,
spot
that's right.
where he took a headshot to the ring post, and the ring posts aren't rounded; they're actually cornered,
Right.
which sounds like a horrible business decision. But to each their own. And the title shot just added on to that. And there
Yeah.
was a camera shot where they caught Moxley adding on a little to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. He was flicking it a little bit.
yeah,
After the
a little disappointed.
ring shot, right? That's when he was doing that. But you could see the blood, and it actually helped the match, in my opinion. Because
Yeah,
later he reveals that the eye is not hurt, but it looked like his eye, because of the eye patch, it actually covered up where the gash was, so it looked like
right,
his eye was actually bleeding. And then it get hits with
right.
the title shot, and that really opened it up, and his eye looks like it's just gushing with blood. And then he reveals the wound above his eye, and it's not, it's actually an eye gushing blood, but his eye is fine, and he sees everybody with 2020.
So this brought up what I thought was the greatest words to come out of the announce table. Tony Schiavone says, "I think he can see," and I doubled over.
I've not been shy with Fox about my distaste of the AEW broadcast team. I feel like Tony Schiavone is good in his kind of his interview sections, and I think he should do more of that. I think Jim Ross should be off the booth as well, and I think he should be more backstage in the announcers' ears, kind of guiding them that way. But I really think that we need a 2-man team of Taz and Excalibur, and things like Tony Schiavone saying, "I think he can see," is prime examples of why I feel that way.
God bless Tony Schiavone.
So yeah, he reveals the eye. It's fine. Go on to the end of the match.
So he reveals the eye. He turns. He looks at Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho's shocked to see that there are 2 eyeballs, in fact, in the skull of Jon Moxley. And in his moment of hesitation, he receives a paradigm shift for the pin.
For the pin. 1, 2, 3. John Moxley is the winner. How do you feel about the actual fight? So for me, I thought everything leading up into this match was super well done. That this match actually fell a little bit flat over what I felt like it could have been or should have been.
So I have this thing where I go, Chris Jericho is getting up in his age. Chris Jericho is also touring with a rock band on top of all the other wrestling promotions Chris Jericho is doing things with. I don't expect high performances out of Chris Jericho. I get pleasantly surprised when they happen, but I kind of expected this match not to be as good as the build-up, and I wasn't disappointed.
So you saw, it's probably a year ago now, you saw Jericho face off with Kenny Omega over in Japan twice, I believe. They had a match and then they had a rematch. And
Yes.
Dave Meltzer actually rated both of those matches 5 stars. So we know that Jericho's still capable of performing
Yes.
At those high levels. But I felt like he was just holding himself back in this match with Moxley, which I didn't expect, a 5-star match as far as wrestling goes. I thought it was going to be more of a brawl, but it still was kind of a letdown. That something was missing. I don't know what it was, but something was missing out of this match that could have got it to where it needed to be.
Right.
So on the flip side, do you think it was the right time, as a fan, do you think it was the right time for Moxley to win the championship?
Yeah, I'm good with the title swap. Jericho had a long run. He's still the longest and youngest reigning AEW champion.
Well, not youngest, right? Moxley's
youngest for the amount of time because Moxley is. My bad.
So I've
become so accustomed to saying it.
Right. I was completely against putting the title on Moxley already. I've read some things online that Jericho has some things coming up. He's not going to be fully available over the next few months, and that might have been part of the reason that they went ahead and did this. But I thought it was premature. This is really their first matchup between Jericho and Moxley. And we've become so accustomed to at least 2, but more usual. There's 3 matches. There's the rubber match between 2 competitors, and I would have liked. Moxley is being booked too much like Cena right now. He's overcoming all odds, no matter what's stacked against him, and I'm not a fan of that type of booking. I would have much rather seen. I know we just had our first cage match. I would have not done that cage match between MJF and Cody Rhodes. I would have much rather seen Jericho win tonight, and then at the next pay-per-view, we saw a cage match between Jericho and Moxley. Then you kept the Inner Circle outside of the ring from interfering in the match. Moxley was one-on-one with Jericho. Jericho didn't stand a chance at that point. But Moxley just overcoming all odds, I thought was a little bit too much. And on top of that, he just came through a he came through a brutal feud that didn't seem like much with Omega. And they had their rubber match, and it was hardcore. And he got the win over Omega, driving Omega through, the coffee table. It seems like he went a little bit light on Chris Jericho when it comes to how dangerous John Moxley can be. But because he's already beat Omega, he's already beat Jericho. What is next for John Moxley? Especially if he's not chasing something. He's not chasing the belt. I feel like you kind of lose a little bit of interest in that character because he's already at the pinnacle, where Jericho could have continued to make him chase after him, and that made more sense for him in that way.
I think Moxley's going to do just fine. Jericho was the I have the title, it's my title, it's going to be my title. I'm not going to give you a chance for it not to be my title. Whereas Moxley is just going to go, here it is, come try and get it. And he's just going to abuse anyone who tries to get it from him. And you mentioned John Cena, the United States title defense, every week.
Right.
I can see Moxley doing that. He kind of alluded to it.
Yeah,
at
he
the
did
end of the show
when he spoke to the crowd at the end of the show. So it was a very solid pay-per-view. What do you think overall about the pay-per-view? That's weird that Rio is on this image.
I didn't even notice that. So this pay-per-view, it's a great pay-per-view. Looking back over the card again, women's aside, and that happens sometimes. This was just an amazing card. It was great performing, great storytelling. It's easily a 4 to 4.5 star pay-per-view.
I completely agree, and I think this is probably the best. And it feels like we say this every time they put on a pay-per-view, but this is probably the best show, start to finish, that they have put out so far.
Yeah. So AEW charges real pay-per-view prices, not $9.99 a month. And I gotta say, this left me with no regrets for dropping that money.
So tomorrow we have it's actually today now. It's 2:18 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday morning that we're taping this. We've got Dynamite tonight. I don't think much has been announced, but we do know for the next pay-per-view, I think it's called Blood and Glory. I really expected them to go with what was their first one? Why can't I think of that?
Oh, the Blood and Glory is not a pay-per-view.
Oh, is it not? Is it just a regular Dynamite episode?
The next pay-per-view is All In.
Okay, All In 2.
This is going to be a normal Dynamite episode with a very familiar feel to it.
Yeah, it looks like they were going with the War Game style, which is interesting since the other platform owns that name, unlike Bash at the Beach that they did have the opportunity to take over. So what do you think about Dynamite kind of doing these Bash at the Beach or like these special Dynamites?
For this scenario, they did Bash at the Beach for the Dynamite prior to them going on to the Jericho Cruise.
Right.
If you're going to have special one-off events with big things like that, I'm all for it. I'm not sure about this one that we're doing, just because we're doing a special match type. So I'm gonna have to fill it out and see how it goes. I'm just not sure where I stand on it.
And it really looks like, just storyline wise going into it, it looks like it's probably going to be Inner Circle versus Moxley, maybe Jurassic Express, and maybe Darby Allin going into this match. Would I be right into thinking that? Do you think that's the way that's going to go?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, because there's just so many factions. It's really hard to say it's definitive this versus this. It's not like back in the day when we had NWO and WCW.
Right.
I mean, there's like 5 different factions right now alone, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah, you could even see SCU versus the Dark Order, and maybe that's when Christopher Daniels finally shows his true colors, right?
Maybe.
So for Dynamite tonight, any matches that were already scheduled that you know of?
The only match I heard announced was that Jon Moxley will be tag teaming with Darby Allin to face Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara.
And how do you think that match is going to go? Just going in blind. Where do they go from
Um,
here?
I mean, knowing his history, it feels really weird to say this, but I don't think Moxley is a good tag team performer.
That's probably fair to say. Um, it's kind of interesting that that's where they're going, and it's kind of interesting that they haven't announced anything else. We scoured online their Twitter page, their website. I checked the official AEW Dynamite Twitter page. I didn't see anything.
Right. I understand not wanting to spoil the results of Revolution. Maybe get yourself some post view buys, but guys, it's been long enough. Update
Right.
your shit.
And you found something interesting on the guide, right, for Dynamite. What was the info on Dynamite, and followed by the image?
So the info, the little tag where TNT tells you about the episode you're about to watch of a television show, basically said who's going to come out the winner, who's going to enter Dynamite as the AEW World Champion. And then you have the image that's the basically like thumbnail placeholder. It's Jon Moxley and it's Chris Jericho, and Moxley's got the title draped over his shoulder.
Yeah, way to tease the results of the pay-per-view by spoiling it at the same time.
Yes.
Anything you want to close with? I think this has been a really good first episode. What else do you have to say?
Oh, the audience. So AEW did something very unique in that they wanted to include the audience in something. And the way they decided to include the audience in this pay-per-view is they had special LED bracelets, and every seat had an LED bracelet on it for a fan to wear. And these bracelets were timed to light up with different effects during intro music.
Right.
And it was just an awesome thing to see.
Yeah, I thought that was really unique. Everybody raising their arms and seeing the different colors of whoever was coming out. I thought that was very unique and really really well done, and it kind of added to the element of you're in something special because these fans get to go home from the match and they get to bring those bracelets home, and I think that's really cool.
It's not a chair.
It's not a yeah. Which they've done the chairs too, which is cool.
They have.
I know that our good buddy Zazabu has a chair that he paid a lot of money for his seat. But this seemed like a little bit cheaper of an option that actually allowed everybody to be a part of it instead of just the people that spent more money as well.
The guys sitting on the floor were as much as part of the show as the guys in the balcony. And that is a great thing to me. I'm a little disappointed that when they came to town, I didn't have a bracelet in my chair. I'll have to call and ask for a refund.
So in closing, anything you want to plug? You stream on Twitch. Do you want to plug your channel?
Sure. It's twitch.tv/red_fox15. You can find me there on Wednesday nights after Dynamite.
Just like you see over there. I also stream on twitch.tv/TieFighterX1. I stream every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's it for this week of the tie-up. I'm TIE Fighter X1. He is Red Fox 15, and we will see you live again, or not live, but we will be back with another episode dropping Tuesday, the day prior to Dynamite. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to drop on the day of Dynamite, but we're going to try and drop the day before Dynamite each week. So I want to thank you again for checking out our first ever podcast. And Fox, thank you so much for being a part of it with me.
Oh, pleasure.
All right, guys. Until next time, peace.